Most people ask who would miss them. A harder question is this: when would anyone even notice? You catch the thumbprint haze on the elevator mirror as the doors close, and it hits you that absence is rarely dramatic at first. It usually begins as one small break in an ordinary routine. Nobody spends the whole day scanning for your face. What do they actually notice first? They notice you the way they notice a blue square on a wall calendar, by expecting it to stay where it always is. So the first answer is uncomfortable and strangely calming. People usually notice you when your timing stops matching theirs. That is why being loved and being noticed are not exactly the same thing. Someone can care about you deeply and still miss the first few days. Meanwhile, a receptionist, a barista, or the man at the parking gate may spot the gap sooner because patterns reach them before feelings do. Think about the transit card you always tap at nearly the same minute. What teaches the world where to expect you? In the morning light, the worn plastic edge looks almost polished, and that little repeated motion is what teaches the world where to expect you. Notice often starts there, in repetition, not confession. At a corner cafe, a woman orders the same tea after work and folds the paper sleeve into a neat ring before she leaves. When does a regular become missing? The barista does not panic when she misses one evening, but by the third his hand pauses over the extra sleeve, and he glances once toward the door, because her missing has finally interrupted something ordinary. Importance is not always what gets tracked first. You run a thumb over the curled edge of a gate receipt, and the simple truth appears: repetition leaves a brighter outline than intensity. Every Tuesday, one locker in the gym opens a little earlier than the others, and one green bottle lands on the same bench. When that latch stays cold for 2 weeks, the instructor asks if everything is okay. Not because the person was loud, but because a place had quietly made room for them and kept expecting their return. Being seen is often less mystical than people want it to be. What is being seen, really? In the sink light, the pale cup ring on a counter looks like a placeholder, and that is close to how notice works. You become part of a sequence, and the sequence stumbles when one step goes missing. Why do some noisy people disappear without much reaction, while some quiet people get noticed fast? The answer is not charm alone. It is whether other lives were built around their regular presence, their regular timing, their regular small usefulness. In one office, the same person always straightens the loose cable before the weekly call and sets out the notepad nobody remembers to bring. The chair wheels leave thin arcs on the floor, and nobody thanks them much. Then one morning the call starts late, the notes are missing, and their absence suddenly has shape that everyone can feel. Missing is often practical before it becomes emotional. You slide a finger across the cool metal of a mailbox flap, and the order becomes clear. First the task is late, then the feeling arrives. People usually detect absence through interrupted labor. Maybe you were the one who replied first, brought batteries, remembered birthdays, opened the blinds, or refilled the printer paper. The coiled charging cable on a desk catches a stripe of light, and it reminds you that roles get noticed because they leave visible gaps. There is another layer too. What if the first witness is not a person at all, but a pattern? In some buildings, your hallway light clicks on around the same hour each night. When it does not, the corridor keeps its shadow longer than usual, and that tiny difference can register before anyone forms a sentence about you. The body notices changes before the story catches up. Even machines are built around rhythm. At the laundromat, one drum turns with a steady silver reflection, round and round, and then suddenly one Sunday it stays still. That does not mean a machine cares. It means routine is measurable, and anything measurable can make missing visible. That sounds cold, but it does not have to stay cold. The motion sensor in a stairwell throws a soft rectangle across the wall, and what it teaches is simple. Ordinary life is where notice begins, not in speeches, not in grand loyalty tests. It starts in the small, repeatable ways people learn your shape. A man in an apartment building always waters the plant outside his door on Saturday mornings, then leaves the empty can by the mat to dry. The thin mineral line inside the saucer keeps dropping week after week. When the leaf tips start folding and the mat stays dry, his neighbor knocks, because the missing routine has become visible. A difficult part of this topic is that people often notice function before essence. At a cafeteria table, the napkin crease beside a tray stays untouched, and what gets missed first is not your soul. It is the thing you usually carried, started, checked, fixed, or remembered for everyone else. Does that mean you only matter when you are useful? Not really. It means attention follows friction. The brass spare key feels heavier in your palm than it should, and that weight explains something. Lives designed to cause no trouble can go unseen longer because they create fewer alarms when they stop. Low-maintenance people often leave the quietest alarms. On a whiteboard ledge, the eraser dust sits undisturbed, and the point lands gently. Being easy to handle can make your missing slower to register. In a small meeting, one person usually writes a summary and sends it before lunch, almost without being asked. The foil of a half-open medicine packet flashes on the table because they came straight from an appointment and still showed up. The day they do not, everyone waits for notes that never come, and the room suddenly feels unfinished. So what is usually missed first? Your voice, your warmth, or your timing? Watch a hand rest on the varnished bus pole as the city slides by, and the honest answer is timing. Then labor. Only a little later do people miss the particular emotional texture that only you brought. This is why loneliness can feel so confusing. You may think nobody would notice you when the truer fear is that they would notice you in layers. At a clinic desk, the cold clip of a blank clipboard touches your wrist, and the thought arrives. First, the schedule moves, then the meaning of you catches up inside it. Picture a row of houses in winter. One porch usually glows before dinner, one coat is usually shaken out on the railing, and one person always clears the flyers before rain. When the sleeve stays still for days and the porch remains dark, someone finally slows down, looks twice, and decides to check instead of walking past. The useful reframe is not to become louder just to prove you exist. At a storefront, the small teeth of a key pause before the lock, and the better idea appears. If you want to be noticed, become part of a living exchange. Shared habits make people legible to one another. What helps then if your life is almost invisible by design? You flatten the fold of a paper map on a table and see the practical answer. Build a few repeated traces, a weekly message, a standing coffee, a neighbor who expects your light, a friend who expects your Wednesday reply. And still, your worth does not begin at the moment someone notices you are gone. Under the porch bulb, a thin halo rests on the doormat grit, and that final quiet part matters. Notice is about pattern. Value is older than pattern, but gentle ties repeated over time make your missing easier for the world to see.